طبعا يعني محب للقرآن جدا.
I believe that the Islam religion is the best religion for our people.
إن الإسلام بدا غريبا.
إنما دعوة إسلامية.
النبي عليه الصلاة والسلام.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ولا تستوي الحسنة ولا السيئة ادفع بالتي هي أحسن فإذا الذي بينك وبينه عداوة كأنه ولي حميم. وما يلقاها إلا الذين صبروا وما يلقاها إلا ذو حظ عظيم.
And he frustrated some of Napoleon's best generals for 15 years. Remarkably, self-control and managing passions that others might have succumbed to. He never allowed the demons of hatred and anger and the desire for revenge to control him. Timothy Davis, a lawyer from Utica, names a town in Iowa, which is still there today, Abdelkader, a village that he was involved in establishing to put up a milling operation, and his partner said to him, well, what do we name this place? And they turned to him and he said, well, there's this Arab chieftain I've been reading about, and he admired from what he'd read about him. Let's name it after him. Emir Abdelkader had established a reputation of being a man of his word, a sort of a chivalrous fighter who treated his prisoners with remarkable concern, and later on in life, when he was in prison, his greatest fans and lobbyists and promoters were French soldiers who had been his prisoners. A British poet, Thackeray, writing poems about him. You have British, Irish racehorse owners naming a racehorse after him, which won the Grand National Steeplechase Championship two years in a row, 1850, 1851. It was a kind of a little Seabiscuit story, this little small Arab horse that nobody thought could win, called Little Abdelkader. Wins for the first time in the history of the Grand National the race two years in a row. Popularity wasn't just among some elite literati. His popularity had actually sunken down to the masses. When he passed through Bordeaux on his way to Amboise, where he was held prisoner for most of the time he was in France, the people of Bordeaux were so impressed by his character and his graciousness and his manners that in the presidential election of 1849, the French presidential election of 1849, citizens of Bordeaux wrote him in as a write-in candidate for the presidency of France.
Emir Abdelkader Al Jazairy, one of the great people of Islam, because he embodied all the meanings of Islam. He was a scholar, he was a sharif, he was a mujahid, he was the ruler of a country. He was a merchant, just everything. He really embodied the Sunnah in so many ways. But when he was exiled to Turkey first, France, he was in prison, then he went to Turkey. In France, all the French guards that guarded him in Marseille, they all became Muslims. They're buried, there's a Muslim graveyard for these French people in Marseille where he was in prison. And then Napoleon realized what a wrong was done to him, and so he had him brought to Paris and given medals, and even though they took his country away from him, because he was such a noble person.
They arrived in 1830. Within a matter of weeks, many coastal regions were under the control of the French army, estimated at 34,000 men, under the command of General Louis Alexis de Michel. A few months later, in January 1831, news had quickly spread amongst the locals in the Algerian coastal city of Wahran. Soon thereafter, a meeting of tribal leaders and elders was hosted with the intent of electing a commander who would unite the various tribes and consolidate their ranks in a joint effort to repel the French invaders. During the course of this urgent and critical assembly, an elderly gentleman was appointed to the post of Amir al-Mu'mineen by all of those in attendance. However, he emphatically declined the honor on account of his old age. The assembly, struck by his refusal and bewildered by the encroaching military threat, subsequently decided by unanimous consent to appoint instead the old man's 24-year-old son as a commander of the faithful. Within less than a week, the Algerian resistance was united under the leadership and command of Emir Abdelkader Al Jazairy. And within less than a year, the young Emir mounted several successful campaigns, which resulted in the consolidation of various tribes, whose regions were for the first time in a very long time reunited under the protection and guardianship of a unified and organized army. Amir Abdulkader ibn Muhyiddin al-Hassani al-Jazairy, a man whose name embellishes the golden pages of history as one of those very rare and unique liberators of men and restorers of justice. He came from very humble beginnings, born in a pious household. The child soon memorized the art of reading and writing by the tender age of 5 years old. This he learnt from his mother, Zuhra, an enlightened and very educated woman who was considered a scholarly figure among her people. She also taught him how to make his own garment, how to perform ritual ablutions, and she also taught him prophetic traditions. Within just a couple of years of the Emir's command of the Muslim resistance in Algiers, the French administration were prepared to come to the table and agree to a peace treaty. The year was 1834. Both parties agreed to terms under which the region of Wahran would remain within the control of Emir Abdelkader Al Jazairy and his army. The diplomatic agreements between Amir Abdelkader and the French administration was celebrated as a success by all parties involved. Thereafter, his reputation as a respectable and notable leader began to spread far and wide, but in a series of retractions and hostile provocations from the French, resulting in many ensuing battles, a second peace treaty was agreed in the year 1837, wherein Amir Abdelkader was able to gain control of an even greater territory that now included Wahran and the neighboring cities. With the newly agreed terms concluded by the Treaty of Daphne, This was agreed by the French and also by Emir Abdelkader Al Jazairy. Now efforts were made to amalgamate the various tribes and regions under the governorship of one unified state, whose capital would be the northwestern province of Taqdemt. Here, Amir Abdelkader Al Jazairy established a new state that would be fashioned and governed after the city of Al-Madinah under the guidance and leadership of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Amir Abdelkader Al Jazairy rejected the honorific title of Sultan. Instead, he preferred to appoint scholars to various posts of leadership and authority in the land. Amir Abdelkader Al Jazairy's leadership style was exceptional. He was a man of tremendous charisma and uncompromising integrity. It is well known that during his reign, several Christians and Jewish professionals were employed to serve in his administration, somewhat reminiscent of the reign of the great Sultan and commander Salahuddin al-Ayyubi. Indeed, the similarities are strikingly appropriate, and on one occasion, Amir Abdelkader Al Jazairy freed many French prisoners of war simply because he had run out of provision with which to feed them. In fact, long before the Geneva Convention was ever written up, Abdelkader Al Jazairy had already concluded and instituted a guide for how to treat prisoners of war. And furthermore, he also granted prisoners the right to lodge complaints against any form of maltreatment while in captivity.
يا أيها الذين آمنوا كونوا قوامين لله شهداء بالقسط ولا يجرمنكم شنآن قوم على ألا تعدلوا اعدلوا هو أقرب للتقوى واتقوا الله إن الله خبير بما تعملون.
Amir Abdelkader Al Jazairy was also a very spiritual and devout believer, one whose love and reverence of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was well known and evident in his conduct. Upon his official orders, the currency circulated under his reign came to be known as the Muhammadiyya, in honor of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. As for his personal conduct and characteristics, Emir Abdelkader Al Jazairy was humble and down to earth. At the height of his military conquest and rule over the people, he took residence in a simple tent and shunned the luxurious trappings of palaces and castles, as was the custom and standards of the elite. I will enter into your mountains, I will burn your villages and your harvests, I will cut down your fruit trees. These were the words uttered by General Thomas Robert Bigot on his return to Algeria in a final mission to destroy the forces of Amir Abdelkader Al Jazairy and to quell the resistance once and for all. In a series of battles and confrontations between the forces of Amir Abdelkader Al Jazairy and General Thomas Robert, both sides gained significant victories and suffered several defeats in equal measures. However, it was the French army's brutality and total disregard for sanctity of civilian lives and general accepted boundaries that resulted in the ultimate defeat of Emir Abdelkader and his army. The war came to an end on December the 21st in the year 1847, when Amir Abdelkader Al Jazairy agreed to surrender on the agreement that he would be allowed to emigrate to a Muslim land. Alexandria in Egypt was his choice. This final demand was granted and a couple of days later, the Emir handed in his war horse to the French as a gesture that marked the end of war. However, in a final act of betrayal and treachery, the French administration refused to honor the agreement and instead held him prisoner shortly before sending him, his family, and his close associates to France. Once his arrival in France was confirmed, and his entourage began what would become an ongoing series of transfers from one prison to another, the adverse and unpleasant conditions of the Emir's imprisonment and maltreatment by the French began to evoke public condemnation. Though an enemy of the state, Amir Abdelkader, and his outstanding reputation as a man of honor and unquestionable dignity, was almost proverbial in France as it was in Algeria. Among the notable and prominent French personalities who publicly campaigned on behalf of the Emir were the likes of Victor Hugo, Émile Ollivier, and Émile de Girardin. The growing consternation and trepidation surrounding the maltreatment of Amir Abdulkader and his family and friends resulted in his pardon and release on the orders of the supreme leader of France, Louis Napoleon Bonaparte, the third emperor. The Emir was also granted an annual allowance of 100,000 francs in return for his promise to abstain from fighting the French in Algeria upon his return home. However, before his departure from France, Emir Abdelkader Al Jazairy had invited a number of his prison guards to the religion of Islam, and his exemplary character and behavior in prison became the stuff of legends. Following a brief time in Turkey, the Emir relocated to Damascus, Syria, and retired there to lead the contemplative life of a writer and thinker. Amir Abdelkader Al Jazairy was a man of rare character. Even during his retirement in Damascus, his reputation as a helper of humanity and a champion of justice followed him to the farthest ends of the world. The Christians of Damascus remember the Emir for his role in saving their lives and the lives of many innocent men and women during a conflict that broke out in the 1860s, wherein Christians were being attacked openly and indiscriminately. Amir Abdelkader Al Jazairy and his group of around 40 warriors mounted their horses and went to rescue the Christians of Damascus. The Emir even opened his house to shelter these men and women, while his own sons went out in search of more Christians to whom they could extend an offer of safety and shelter. Among those persecuted Christians was a high-ranking French official who was absolutely amazed by the courage and kindness of the Emir. We were in consternation, all of us quite convinced that our last hour had arrived. In that expectation of death, in those undescribable moments of anguish, heaven, however, sent us a savior. Abdelkader appeared, surrounded by his Algerians, around 40 of them. He was on horseback and without arms. His handsome figure, calm and imposing, made a strange contrast with the noise and disorder that reigned everywhere. Le Siècle, August 2nd, 1869.
من أجل ذلك كتبنا على بني إسرائيل أنه من قتل نفسا بغير نفس أو فساد في الأرض فكأنما قتل الناس جميعا ومن أحياها فكأنما أحيا الناس جميعا.
Far beyond his military conquests and valiant stance against the French invaders of Algeria, Emir Abdelkader Al Jazairy's magnanimous actions in Damascus resulted in several heads of state recognizing and rewarding his undeniable superiority of spirit. He was granted medals and awards from Turkey, France, Greece, Great Britain, and the Vatican. He even received a personal gift from Abraham Lincoln. And in 1846, a newly founded American town, inhabited by Catholics and Lutherans, was named Al-Kader. The townsfolk were known as the Al-Kaderites. Amir Abdulkader lived in an era of exceptional leaders, endowed with charisma, courage and character. Men like Imam Shamil of Dagestan, with whom Amir Abdelkader had the opportunity to meet and spend time with during the Great Hajj of 1825.
من المؤمنين رجال صدقوا ما عاهدوا الله عليه فمنهم من قضى نحبه ومنهم من ينتظر وما بدلوا تبديلا.
Emir Abdelkader Al Jazairy died in Damascus on May the 27th, 1883. Even long after his body had been laid to rest, his legacy will continue to arouse the spirit of courage, integrity, and heroism throughout the world. His accomplishments were indeed unique, although he too, like all other ordinary men, was not without shortcomings or fault. Yet in the scale of human endeavor and mortal boundaries, he has indeed left an example worthy of honor.